Welcome to the Medicaid Eligibility and Enrollment Toolkit. The Toolkit was created to enhance technical assistance to states and their vendor partners in the development and implementation of their eligibility and enrollment systems. We've separated this training video into 3 parts. In the first section, we'll tour the Toolkit components. In the second section, we explain the Medicaid Eligibility and Enrollment Lifecycle, or MEELC, and show how states can align with it even if they have already begun development. MEELC is used for projects that do not require certification. In Section 3, we cover how a state can prepare for a milestone review. Let's get started. There is a welcome document that gives a brief description of the other documents and release notes, the Medicaid Eligibility and Enrollment Lifecycle document that contains detailed guidance about the process, a diagram of the life cycle with quick reference sheets, a list of artifacts to be submitted for each of the milestone reviews, standard wording for states to include in their IV&V RFPs and contracts, the E&E IV&V progress report template, a concept of operations template for the state to use if it wishes, a MITA self-assessment tool that the state can use if it chooses, a project partnership understanding template, a milestone review preparation guide, and the checklist set is also posted with the toolkit. Now let's look at the E&E lifecycle diagram since it gives a big picture view of the process. This is Appendix A of the toolkit. Across the top are the 4 review phases, and along the left are the 3 major roles: CMS, the state and its developers, and the IV&V contractor. The 3 types of milestone reviews are shown as large vertical rectangles. E&E systems, unlike MMIS, do not go through certification. States should work with their E&E analysts to determine the most appropriate place to enter the MEELC, since many states have development projects already in progress or systems in operation. When any activity in the diagram is clicked, the reader is taken to an at-a-glance sheet. These quick reference pages summarize the purpose of the activity, who is involved, what is expected, and the lower-level steps. Greater detail about each activity can be found in the E&E Lifecycle document. Let's look at the E&E Lifecycle document. This document covers topics such as the importance of a system integrator and a state program management function, and an explanation of how the lifecycle and the APD processes fit together. Other sections include roles, details about the activities we just saw in the workflow diagram, coverage of the checklists, and finally, how to prepare for milestone review. The artifacts list includes a list of artifacts for each of the milestone reviews. In this column is a list of the document names. The next column shows the minimum information that should be included in the documents. Also, Waterfall and Agile methods call documents by different names. We've tried to account for this. The last 3 columns indicate for which milestones each artifact should be submitted for the milestone review. Next in the toolkit is the standard language for including in IV&V acquisition documents such as RFIs, RFPs, contracts, and contract modifications. The state can copy the language into its own procurement template. The wording should be included as written. Keep in mind, this is what CMS requires of the IV&V contractor. The state may make additional requirements. For example, extend the scope beyond the post-operational review and well into operations and maintenance. However, the state may not hire the IV&V contractor to test software. True technical and managerial independence must be maintained. So, the IV&V contractor cannot report to the same state entity that manages the project. And, since the IV&V contractor will be reviewing the performance of the software testers, it cannot perform that role. A state may choose to hire a separate quality assurance contractor to perform software testing. The last section delineates the scope of the IV&V reviews to include project management and technical inspections. CMS will be looking for this language when they review states' IV&V contracts. The E&E IV&V progress report template is what the state and CMS use to track progress of the project. The report is divided into 3 tabs in an Excel workbook. The IV&V contractor fills out the IV&V and programmatic tabs and sends the report simultaneously to CMS and the state. If it is a regular quarterly report, CMS may include comments in the CMS tab and send it to the state and the IV&V contractor. If it is a report submitted in preparation for a milestone review, CMS will fill out the CMS tab as its post-review summary and send the completed workbook back to the state and to the IV&V contractor. For reports being submitted prior to a milestone review, the IV&V contractor must include all completed checklists. On to the next Toolkit component, the Concept of Operations template. This has been included as a courtesy to states, which may or may not choose to use it. Appendix F is a MIDA self-assessment scorecard that a state may find helpful when doing its self-assessment. States are encouraged, though not required, to use it. The Project Partnership Understanding, PPU, is used to document decisions made between the state and CMS during the first activity and the life cycle. Finally, the Milestone Review Preparation Guide gives states practical advice on how to get ready for a milestone review. The checklists are found in a downloadable zip file. Now that we have seen the Toolkit components, let's go to Section 2, where we will look at the key activities in the life cycle. In the Toolkit, the E&E life cycle is shown from beginning to end, but many states are already in the middle of upgrading their systems. A state that has already begun its journey will work with CMS to determine at what phase it enters the process. States are encouraged to develop their E&E system using an agile approach. The first activity in the process is an informal consult that the state initiates with CMS, where the state shares with CMS its thoughts about updating its E&E system. This consult occurs before any PAPD is submitted because early feedback from CMS can prevent a lot of rework for the state later. If the state is entering the life cycle mid-flight, it will still consult with CMS and fill out a Project Partnership Understanding. During the consult, a few things are accomplished. First, the state and CMS agree upon a preliminary high-level schedule for milestone reviews based on the state's plans up to that point. This enables the state to build the milestone reviews into its project schedule. Secondly, CMS and the state decide how frequently the IV&V progress reports will be generated. At a minimum, they must be generated quarterly, but some projects may warrant more frequent reports. This schedule is decided during the consult so that the state can include this information in its IV&V RFIs and RFPs. And the state and CMS decide what documentation is appropriate to the type of development being pursued. Finally, the decisions are captured in a Project Partnership Understanding document that can be updated throughout the life cycle as necessary. Another key activity is the IAPD submission. The Toolkit does not alter the APD process, but it does explain how the E&E lifecycle and APD processes overlap. The state does not submit its IAPD until after it has received the IV&V contractor's IV&V progress report. This allows the state to remedy any issues before it submits the IAPD. The initial project initiation milestone review is held within 30 days of the IAPD submission. Approval of the IAPD itself does not depend upon the project initiation milestone review. We'll now examine how states can prepare for milestone reviews. To prepare for milestone review, the state fills out the state portions of the checklists. The Technical Architecture, Information Architecture, and Standards and Conditions checklists must be used. The state stores the checklists and supporting evidence in its own repository. The IV&V contractor then completes the reviewer sections of the checklists and completes the IV&V and programmatic tabs of the E&E IV&V progress report template. The completed checklists are appended to the report. The IV&V contractor then submits the report and checklist simultaneously to the state and to CMS. When the state receives the checklist from the IV&V contractor, it should save them in the state repository as new versions. No later than 2 weeks before the milestone review, the state must grant CMS access to the evidence. It is critical that all HIPAA regulations are followed if the state is submitting evidence that contains protected health or personally identifiable information, PHI, or PII. The Project Initiation Milestone Review consists of CMS reviewing the progress report and checklist. CMS will respond with comments in the CMS section of the report and send copies of the progress report to the state and to the IV&V contractor. This concludes the milestone review. No site visit is usually required. However, there may be cases where CMS considers a more formal review to be appropriate and may schedule a virtual or an on-site visit for the Project Initiation Milestone Review, R1. In such cases, CMS will notify the state if this is necessary and will work with the state to schedule the review and arrange logistics. For the operational milestone review, CMS will decide on a case-by-case basis whether the E&E analyst review of the progress report will constitute the operational milestone review or whether there is still a need to have a virtual or an on-site review. For the post-operational milestone review, CMS will conduct a virtual or on-site review. CMS will work with the state to schedule the review and arrange logistics. When requesting a review, the state needs to ensure that the IV&V contractor has sent all completed checklists and the progress report, the state has granted CMS access to the checklist evidence and all artifacts for the milestone review. No reviews will be scheduled until these actions have been completed. To recap, in Section 1 we toured the Toolkit's components. In Section 2, we looked at the Medicaid eligibility and enrollment lifecycle and how states can align with it. And in Section 3, we examined how states can prepare for milestone reviews. We hope this video has been helpful. Please visit our frequently asked questions page at the Medicaid.gov location shown below.